Hello and welcome to the Big Fat Life podcast here on the Pink Eagle Media Network. I'm your host, Dan Rosado. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before I introduce our next guest, just want to give you guys a little heads up. Make sure you listen through to the end. We make a huge announcement. Our next guest is someone I found on Instagram. She follows a keto diet. She's been doing it now for almost 2 full years. And it wasn't just about weight loss for her. She also had been diagnosed early on with epilepsy, and it seems to have helped her. And we talk about her process with keto. We talk about so many different keto stories on this show. But what I found interesting about her and her Instagram page, which is how I found her, is she shares a lot of food, a lot of her recipes. She has made this a part of her life, which is something we talk about at length, about really integrating this where it becomes beyond a diet. It's just a way of life, how you eat. And she's found balance and happiness with it. She's lost weight. She feels great. She's healthier than she's ever been. So without further ado, let's call up Britt. Britt, welcome to the Big Fat Life podcast. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being here. And I got to ask you, I found you on Instagram because you've been promoting your journey in the keto lifestyle. So let me start here. Give us some background. Why did you decide that keto was right for you? What made you want to change your diet and figure something out for yourself?
For sure. A lot of different things. So I was definitely that person growing up through my teen years that tried a bunch of different fad diets, everything from Weight Watchers to, I remember when we were in university, like my roommates and I trying the apple cider vinegar diet where we just used to take like shots of apple cider vinegar.
I've done that. Isn't it wonderful?
I think I have like a crazy aversion now to it because I just can't even stand the smell of it. But yeah, I've tried a bunch of different things, kind of yo-yo dieting, lost weight, gained it back, got sick of the lifestyle. So I was really looking for something that was manageable for me long-term, especially with a busy lifestyle. So I had a few friends in the fall of 2019 that suggested I try keto. It felt very overwhelming at first. So I remember taking my time doing a lot of research to make sure it was the right path for me. I also, growing up, I have a history of seizures. Like I was given an epilepsy diagnosis, and I know the keto diet, there's literature to support seizure prevention and reduction. So that was a plus for me. I started off when I started going strict keto in January of 2020. I got a meal plan through someone that I found on Instagram because for me, it was just overwhelming at first to figure out what exactly I was doing. It was really helpful to have her design like a meal plan and really customize the macros, what I was eating in terms of fats, proteins, and carbs to me and my body and my goals. So that's really how I got started, a combination of friends suggesting it, doing some research, figuring out that medically and long-term, it was right for me. And it definitely was the right choice. I don't think I've ever followed a diet for more than maybe 12 weeks. I think that's when I had a naturopath that told me I was intolerant to almost everything I was eating. But outside of that, I've now been keto for almost 2 years and definitely no going back. It's totally a lifestyle for me for sure.
What are some of the benefits that you've experienced through keto? Did you notice a reduction in seizures? Did you notice, weight loss and all that?
So many. So of course, weight loss. My first year on keto, I lost about 30 pounds. I probably over the summer, being honest, I've put back maybe 5 because I totally overindulged in traveling and drinking, which I don't recommend, but had fun.
You gotta live a little, right?
You gotta live a little, exactly. And my whole thing is if the diet is not going to be manageable long-term and you're not going to be able to socialize and have fun, then what's the point of doing it? I hate how I keep saying diet too, because it really is a lifestyle for me.
Well, that's the thing. It sounds like that's what happened with you, right? It sounds that because we all have these experiences of trying different things and trying restrictive diets and hearing success stories, even about the restrictive ones. You get the friend that says, you got to do the apple cider vinegar. I'm guaranteeing you, or, you drink all this water and you have this apple cider vinegar and you reduce your meal and blah, 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 or whatever the diet is, and it's going to work. And a lot of times, if we stick with whatever the plan is, we actually do experience positive results. But to your point, sustainability, right? That's like the biggest key. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you have to integrate that into your lifestyle. So it is, the word diet sort of gets jumbled into like this fad thing, but it doesn't have to be that when we think about our diet just being how do we eat now. The thing about this though, listening to how you explain like the meal plans and researching and understand, it is a lot of work. I mean, I wouldn't tell someone, and I've done keto consistently, I've gone off keto, back on keto, on and on and on, but I wouldn't tell someone, oh, yeah, this is really, really simple, because it can be, but you really need to know what you're doing. So how much work do you put into that on a daily basis, or are you finally just cruising?
A combination of both. Like I used an app at first to track kind of my meals. So I knew which meals in terms of breakfast and lunch and dinner worked together for my macros. So I kind of look back on that to remind myself of good combinations. But it takes a lot of thinking, and it was scary at first. Like to look at how much fat I had to consume was scary. To think I'm going to be eating things like extra oils, butters, that kind of like dairy, cheeses, that kind of stuff. It's easier for me because I've been doing it for so long. I have lots of tools like a menu planner and apps that I use to check keto-friendly foods. I have a bunch of support, like not only through Instagram, seeing other people's ideas, but I have a lot of coworkers that are eating low-carb keto that we bounce ideas off each other. We even do things like meal share. We'll be like, okay, today is dessert week, and we all make a dessert and bring it in and kind of share and switch up so we get some new, fresh ideas. But the biggest thing for me is just finding the meals I know I love and enough of them to keep rotating, because if I have to eat the same thing, like I remember when I was doing a fad diet before, eating like a plain spinach salad with oil and chicken every day, like within 2 weeks, I was never wanting to eat spinach again. I love it now because I try to keep variety in my meals, in all of them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I rarely eat the same thing for multiple days in a row. So
right. No, that definitely, it definitely helps when you find consistency of what works. Are there anything, or is there any type of food that is typically considered keto, but actually knocks you out of ketosis?
Yeah, a lot of different things. Like I have to be super cautious of packaging because often things say keto friendly, but they're not. Like they use, sweeteners that aren't really keto friendly or in excess can cause major stomach issues that no one likes. Also some like fruits and vegetables that you would be surprised about the number of carbs or sugars, like things like onions, can easily knock me out of ketosis, or even like bell peppers. I was looking up, I think it was like 3 cups of bell peppers the other day. I was putting in a recipe and it was like 9 to 11 carbs, something like that. And if I'm following strict keto, I'm trying to stay under 18 net carbs a day. So just having like snacking on bell peppers, you can get carried away and definitely knock you out of ketosis.
Yeah, that's always been like the hard part to me about that type of that type of diet or that type of way of eating, because you don't think about something like bell peppers as being something that's not going to work for you, or some kind of fruit or vegetable that you're like, hey, it's healthy, it's natural, literally grows out of the ground.
Yeah,
I'm not adding anything to it. And how do you reconcile that?
It's definitely hard because if I want to have watermelon, I'm going to eat watermelon. Like fruit and vegetables has never made anyone fat, and they're certainly not going to make me fat. So definitely in moderation. But what I try to remember is like the potential harm or the side effects going in and out of ketosis has on my body. Like I know as soon as I've had a cheat weekend, which might not actually be cheating on keto, it's just eating excess of something that will, like vegetables, that will knock me out of it. The following week or few days, I can get like muscle cramping or like tiredness, brain fog, that kind of stuff. So I try to watch or follow my macros pretty tightly when I know I want to stay in like ketosis for an extended period of time. And if I know I'm not going to be in ketosis, I really try hard to stay low carb, because eating like high fats or following a keto diet and then having like a cheat meal, like a cupcake or whatnot, you're just going to do the exact opposite, because you're going to store the carbs and fat, and you're not going to burn off the fat. So I really tell people, like, if someone comes over, I'm going to cook them a keto meal that doesn't have a lot of fat, because
that's one of the things that I notice about your Instagram page is it's not a lot of pictures of you. There's not a lot of before and after of Britt. It's a lot of different meals that you prepare. Why do you think that was important for you to do?
I started, to be honest, when I started the page, I did it because on my personal page, I was following some like keto and fitness accounts. And I found that it was like clogging up my homepage. So, I was like, I'm just going to create like a separate account. I thought like bacon thighs, keto vibes was like a funny kind of rhymed wordplay. So I went with that. Within like the first 4 months, I had like over 1,000 followers. And I was like, wow, I was getting companies like reaching out to me and asking to send me some of their like samples and to try and review them. And it became, not only I felt good by motivating other people, but I was motivated myself because people were enjoying my recipes. People were sharing things. I was getting free stuff, which living on my own on a tighter budget was definitely a nice plus of the account. And then, here we are, like almost 2 years later. I think we have just over 4,000 followers now. And I kind of consider it like a little bit of a side hustle maybe, but it's just the accountability. I've made lots of friends. I've even met a few of them like in person to motivate each other. But I do try to keep it a little bit separate. Like I definitely don't go around my workplace advertising the page and that's why I don't share a ton of before and afters or personal pictures, because I want it to be kind of, I don't want to flash myself all over the page, because I like that no one really knows too much about me, especially because we're on social media here and it's a public page and who knows whose hands it can get into.
And it's interesting that your content is focused on the keto. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with people showcasing themselves, but it makes sense to me that for you, finding the right way of eating has been kind of your life's mission to a degree. Tell me how much different you feel now. I mean, because I imagine when you're younger and you said it yourself, you always try different diets.
Yeah.
It can be like you can feel hopeless, I would imagine.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my mood, my energy, exercise has always been really hard for me. And for the past 2 years since I started keto, I've been going to the gym at least 3 to 4 times every week. Like I've never had a period where it's like a month or two have passed and I haven't. Like my exercise has been super consistent, partly because I just feel better about myself and I have way more energy. I'm enjoying my meals, which is like a huge thing. My friends and family have all been super supportive. My boyfriend actually eats keto, low carb as well. So that's a great support to have in my life. And he gives me lots of praise about my cooking. So that always feels good as well.
Always a bonus. Always a bonus when your food makes people happy.
And I used to hate, like, I remember living in university, going on Pinterest and finding these like elaborate healthy recipes and going out and buying like all these different spices and ingredients and trying it and being like, oh, this is not even good. And you've just spent all that money and time. So being able to master recipes and being able to have the confidence to like see a recipe and figure out what tweaks I need to make to know that I'm going to enjoy it, is just nice. I've never considered myself any type of like cook or chef, but it's funny when people call me like at my job, they're like, oh, the keto queen, or, my boyfriend will be like, I love my chef. Like to hear that, I'm just like, wow, I'm feeling this. But
yeah, it feels like you realize that you made the right choices to be doing this now. You never would have imagined yourself being any kind of social media influencer of any kind, having people look at your content and think, oh, this is going to help me. You're doing that. Yeah. It was amazing, right?
Yeah. To see people like pop in my DMs being like, oh, thank you so much. Like you started my journey, or people make my recipes and tag me in them and say like how great they are. I'm like, and I have people tell me all the time I should put together cookbooks and stuff like that. I'm not at that point yet, maybe because I don't have that time on my hands, but maybe down the road, it's something that I'd consider for sure.
And I imagine that you see yourself staying keto indefinitely, right?
For sure. I would say probably long-term more of a low carb, just in terms of the lifestyle I want to live, like eventually have family, kids, that kind of stuff. I know keto is probably, at least strict keto is not going to be realistic always. And if I'm not planning on being strict keto, I don't think it's good to kind of flip-flop so much. So I say low carb more because I have more fruits and vegetables than would be considered on strict keto, but definitely for life.
Sure. Prior to keto, did you ever feel that you use food as a crutch in any way? Did you ever have binging episodes or anything like that where you felt like I'm using food to medicate? That's not good.
For sure. I mean, I'm not sure if I would consider it completely binging, but I definitely was like an impulse, a stress eater, overwhelmed from work, like a constant snacker. And I never felt like full or satisfied kind of thing. Like the meals I was eating, especially on these diets, I wasn't enjoying them. And I always felt like I needed something else after, which probably led me to just abandoning it altogether and going back to unhealthy eating. But keto, I find like I'm not hungry at night. I feel full after my meals. I wake up. Sometimes I fast because I'm not hungry in the morning. Like there's just so many benefits of it. And it's really, a lot of people say like, oh, it's expensive, this and that. But as long as you're a good planner and you can look ahead, like it's pretty basic. You don't need to buy all the gimmick keto products, the crackers and the cookies and stuff. Like stick to the basics and you'll be good for sure.
Right. No, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I've heard other people who have been doing keto for a long time feeling like maybe those things are not what you want to add to your diet. It's processed food in the end of the day also. So doing these things as natural as possible, as much as you can cook for yourself is a probably as big a part of the equation as anything else.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you notice anything with how you handle things mentally? Sometimes, focus, stress, anxiety, maybe depression. Like, did you have anything like that before and you notice a change after you went full keto?
I definitely like am a type A personality. Like I carry stress and get overwhelmed super easily. I find exercise and diet are huge for me and they go hand in hand. Like when I'm not eating healthy or when I'm not eating what feeds my body properly, which is like a keto low carb lifestyle, I'm not exercising. So then it leads to like increased stress, anxiety, trouble sleeping. I've had chronic sleep insomnia my whole life and a keto diet has really improved my sleep as well. Concentration at work, like everything you mentioned, I have definitely seen benefits from a keto lifestyle for sure.
Do you have people in your life who ever somehow in that passive aggressive way look at your diet and kind of like, well, is that the best way to eat really? Like I've been very successful on my, XYZ diet that I do. That's not keto at all. And sometimes it can come off like they're telling you that maybe what you're doing, even though it's working for you, is wrong. Have you ever come across that? How do you handle that?
Oh, for sure. Always. Even on my page, people that are following keto or low carb will comment and be like, by the way, did you know this isn't actually keto? Like I call them the keto police, but I recently posted something. It's funny you asked that question because just yesterday I posted like a meme that was like, you never said anything when I used to eat this. And it was like McDonald's and candy and chocolate. But now that I eat this, you have an issue with it. And it was like butter and steak and vegetables, stuff like that. So I try to be open and respect other people's opinions. Like my best friend is vegan. Like I have a bunch of friends that follow different diets. And I really think it's just finding what works for you. My family is supportive of me, but definitely don't follow a keto diet. My dad did try it for a few months, but not successful with it. But I just try and take it. Like I know what works for my body and I know what feeds my body best. So I just go with it.
Yeah, no, and that's the best way to handle that, I think. How do you handle gatherings, functions, parties, get-togethers?
Yeah, that was tricky at first. And it's still kind of like, to be honest, I would prefer to have people over and cook everyone a meal versus go to a restaurant because my options at restaurant, like I can cook way better food here. When I go to a restaurant, I'm pretty limited if I'm trying to be strict keto to like a meat and a vegetable or a salad. And I don't want to be that person to be like, is the chicken grilled? Are the, like asking all these questions. Yeah. Does the salad dressing have sugar? Like, I just don't like to be that person. So at first, that was the challenge. Restaurants. Social gatherings, not so much. I'm a pretty big planner and organizer. So I'm often bringing stuff. Like if I know I'm going to my parents and they're making tacos, I'll make sure I have like keto low carb substitutes like lettuce wraps or like a low carb wrap. So I'm usually pretty good with that. But again, like I said, this summer, I overindulged a little bit too much because social. And I always think that's the most important too for your mental health. Like if you're following a diet where you don't have that leeway to be able to once in a while enjoy the hot dog at a ball game or something, like it's not going to be something it wouldn't be something that I would be able to maintain for life. So definitely the first full year of keto, I was super, super strict, just kind of learning what my body needed and how keto exactly worked. The second year, I've loosened up a little bit and tried to be more social as we're coming out of this pandemic, being like, okay, I can't always eat X, Y, and Z when I go to places, but for the most part.
Have you had any moments throughout this journey where maybe something wasn't going your way? Maybe you didn't see any change in your weight or your size and think like, I don't want to do this anymore, even though it was working, like just kind of losing hope in the midst of like all the success?
Yeah, surprisingly, it was at the beginning. I think the first week I did keto, I lost like 7 pounds. And then after that, I think it was almost 2 months where I didn't lose anything. And usually they say like at the beginning of the diet is where you lose the most weight. So I was really discouraged. I had to definitely lean on my keto page, friends, a coach that had a meal plan to figure out what exactly it was that my body was missing, whether I wasn't having enough fat or drinking enough water. But it is hard. I try not to. I've made goals where I want to go a full month without weighing myself. And I try to look more at like non-scale victories, like my mood or my energy or my work ethic or how my clothes are feeling and how they fit, or the jeans that I used to wear in grade 10 fit now. Like I try to look more at that kind of stuff because the scale really is just a number. And sometimes it can definitely discourage you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is understanding, you know, some of the science of the diet that you're, you know, utilizing. And with ketogenic, it could be something else, but the results are always different for everyone, no matter how like strict you're being. And I think that, and tell me how you feel, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're all different and how we respond to different foods is going to vary between all of us.
For sure. Yeah. And even within keto, like I've done weeks where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do 2 weeks without dairy and just see how my body responds to it. Or I'm going to do 2 weeks where I'm going to track everything except my fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to just eat unlimited of those and see how it feels on my body. So I'm constantly, even though I am keto and I follow a keto diet, I'm always trying different things to see what feels best for my overall.
I'll tell you a story. Speaking of different things. So I had gone from keto for a long time to kind of being very loose with keto. And of course, like, you know, there was weight gain there, never what I had been before though. So I kept feeling like I'm doing good at the maintenance thing. And I did that for a while, but then I'm like, I still want to lose weight. And I went hardcore keto again. And I noticed some changes, but I think like sometimes you just you realize that you're trying something, and if it's not working, you like, maybe I'm not mentally ready to go the full, because I knew that if I stayed keto hardcore for, you know, several months, I would notice it, right? And then I just threw the book out the window basically and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the opposite of everything I've been doing. I'm going to go low fat, high carb for a week. That's what I did for 1 week. I mean, I almost want to say I indulged, but I wasn't like consuming like a lot of sugar or anything like that. I still kept the sugar, like especially any added sugar, out. But I was eating fruits. I was eating wraps. I was eating not so much pasta, but a lot of things that I would have just been like, oh, I can't have that. I can't have that. And I just gave it to myself. And I started making smoothies with like tons of fruit in it. And I got to a point about day 5 or 6, and I went to the gym and I started a running program. It just kind of coincided where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this interval training. And I got through that like a beast. Like I got through it and I felt amazing. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay. And ever since then, I kind of reversed back where I stick to low carb for the most part, but I still been giving myself like that fruit smoothie. Cause I'm like, that fruit smoothie, like right after my workout, or right before my workout, kind of gave me that extra jolt. And I lost a little bit of weight in that same process. So what I'm realizing about myself, and I know this podcast is about you, but I'm just sharing that what I realize about myself is that you can always tweak, you can always try, you can always, learn something new, as long as you stay true to what you feel about yourself and how you feel in general. Like if I was sluggish that whole week and if I felt crappy and if I felt bloated, which I did feel a little bit bloated, I will admit to that. Then you kind of say, okay, well, this is going the wrong direction. So I guess my point is you never should be afraid to just try and see what your food is going to do to you, because no one else is going to be able to do it for you. You really got to learn that stuff. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. You've been doing this for 2 years. You've learned a lot about yourself that you never knew before.
Mm-hmm. And everybody is different. Like even when my boyfriend and I, we eat the same meals, our weight, I could gain weight and he could lose weight. His stomach could bother him eating something and it could not bother me. So we really have to be individual for our bodies for sure and figure out what works for us. Yeah.
So Britt, what are some of your goals moving forward? Like, is there anything with like the keto world or with your diet or anything in that respect?
Yeah. I think one would be having the power to say no. Like that's probably always been a thing with me. The reason why I thrive so much off strict keto is because I'm like, oh, I can't have that. But when I transition to low carb, I'm like, I can have a bit of it, but we all know that a bit of it, at least for me, leads to a lot of it. So strict keto for me, when I just have it in my mind that I can't have that, works better. So just kind of balancing, like I want to be able to move forward to like the moderation, the maintenance, that kind of stuff, but I don't think I'm ready for it just yet, especially coming off the summer. That's a big goal. I'd like to lose 10 more pounds maybe, but my body is comfortable right now and I'm still eating healthy. I'm going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. Like if this is how my body's meant to stay, then it's how my body's meant to stay.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, when you get to a point, like by no means am I thinking like, oh, I'm in maintenance mode, because you think in your head, like what maintenance mode is when you hit your ideal weight and you kind of just stay there. But inadvertently, I've been practicing maintenance for a while and realizing like I'm doing it, which is a huge success. If you think about like, if your life is that you've been gaining weight,
yeah,
and you've always identified as a person who's just overweight, then when you start learning and doing things, and even if you fall off your diet a little bit, to find yourself in a place where you're like, well, I'm actually not gaining anymore. You got to like pat yourself on the back and say, I won that.
100%. Yeah.
Because that's a battle your whole life.
For sure. And trying to every, at least 1 week a month, I'm trying to track what I eat like pretty consistently. That's definitely a goal, because then I can figure out at the end of the week, if I'm up or down, maybe what bothered it, or even just during the week. Like if I know the next day I'm feeling tired or sluggish or bloated, like, okay, what did I eat the day before? What was my dinner that maybe bothered my stomach or affected my mood? So trying to be pretty diligent and tracking at least 1 week a month to make sure I'm not going over what my goals are.
Britt, we talked about your Instagram page. Why don't you let everybody know what it is in case they don't follow you, they can start following you.
Of course. Yeah. It's bacon thighs, keto vibes. I thought it kind of rhymed, to play on words a little bit. So that's what it is. Bacon thighs, keto vibes.
If you love keto, you love bacon. So it makes sense. Right. It all works, right?
Right. Yeah.
Britt, I'm going to say, I haven't announced this to anyone yet. So for some people, this is the first time they're going to hear this, but you are the last guest on the Big Fat Life podcast.
Oh,
yeah, we've been doing this now for over 2 years, and there's, I'm going to get into it next week. I'll do a solo episode to kind of explain a little bit more, but we're ending this podcast, and it's been an amazing journey. And I'm really happy that we got to end it with you and your story and how well you've been doing, because it started with keto on my first episode, and we're kind of ending with keto on this episode.
Awesome. I love it. You've come full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. Another great keto story. Britt has really found a balance with her diet and life. It's so exhausting, right? When we have to figure out how do we want to eat, we want to lose weight, or we want to get healthier, and we want to use food to get healthier. How do we figure that out? And when you do, and you find consistency like Britt has, usually success follows. It is another wonderful success story, and we wish her the best. Now, you heard me mention to Britt at the end of the episode that she would be the last guest on the Big Fat Life podcast. And this is true. Now, I just want to let you guys know I'm going to go more in depth about all this next week. I'm going to do a solo pod, my goodbye episode. But just to give you a little understanding right now, life is interesting. You go after something. The podcast was a huge endeavor, and we tackled it. We succeeded. Alyssa and I talked about it from the beginning, and she's been with me every step of the way. And sometimes other things come up in life, and they're good things. And you start to think, how can I do that? Or you have other ideas and ambitions. And when that happens, you have to look at the budget of your life, of your day, of your time. Because time is the one thing you don't get back, right? In this life, time actually is the most valuable commodity you hold, that you own. And what to do with that is very, very, very important. That decision that you make. And seeing that and knowing that changes had to be made, it became inevitable that this podcast, which takes up a very large amount of time to put together, needed to end. And I'm sorry if that's disappointing for some of you. I know it is for some of the stronger supporters who have reached out and told us how much this podcast means. That made it a harder decision for sure. But ultimately, we have to do what's best for us. So please tune in next week. I will definitely explain in depth what's going on. And I promise you that it is much more positive than maybe I sound right now. Saying goodbye is often hard. It does make it easier when you're saying goodbye because you're pursuing important endeavors, something that it becomes like your passion and your dream. And that's the stage of life I'm in right now. It never changes. Life is constantly evolving, and the choices you have to make along the way can be difficult. But again, when it's for something positive, it makes sense to make the decisions that you make. So I will say no more. Tune in next week. And until then, love you guys. Don't forget, if you'd like to watch a video version of this episode, you can just go to YouTube, type in Big Fat Life Podcast, subscribe to the channel, and you'll see this episode. You'll see our conversation as well as other conversations. We're going to keep on loading those up as we go on through the weeks. Thank you once again for tuning into the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you are allowed to leave a rating and review, so feel free to do so as we appreciate the feedback. If you listen somewhere else and you want to let us know how you feel, you can reach us on Instagram and Facebook at Big Fat Life Podcast, and on Twitter, we're Big Fat Life Pod. As always, I thank you for allowing me to share my journey and the story of so many others. Remember, it's a long journey, it's a big fat journey, but one we can reach as long as we stay the course and stay strong. Music in the show, You Can't Fail by Destiny and Time. Our theme song is Clear Eyes by Silent Partner. Our amazing producer is my awesome wife, Alyssa Rosado. Thanks again for listening. Have a great week.